Okay, step one in building the flywheel robot, sometimes referred to as inertia motor or friction motor on a lot of toys. I think you probably see the word friction on a lot of the push toys more. But basically they operate off a flywheel. Is we need to build the flywheel gearbox part first. So this main part, this frame, is the gearbox frame, and it prints just like you see it sitting on your printer with no supports. And this will be the top cover for it, and it prints flat on your printer the same way with no supports. And we're going to be using on our main output drive shaft 2 of these fidget spinner bearings. See how easy they turn. And the main dimensions like what, 22 millimeters on the outside and 7 millimeters thick, and on your inside hole is about 8. So you can find the right fidget spinner bearing and press one of those down into the main part of the frame. And by the way, when I print these parts, I'm using the Prusa slicer because it has the elephant foot compensation, which I always set at 0.4, and it just gets rid of any cleanup you'd have to do. The parts will come off ready to go. And we can push one into the lid part. Like so. Get them all the way in. Alright, next. The drive shaft itself, all of the shaft parts I have made split, so they print flat with no supports. The drive shaft one has a hollow inside, and you can just fit the 2 parts together. You actually don't even need to glue them. And take one of the large gears, which prints flat, and you're going to work that on. It should slide into the hexagonal part of the shaft all the way up. Now we could put a little bit of glue on that gear to make sure it doesn't move later. It can't move very far when we put it together, whether you do or don't, because it's going to be pushed pretty much right up against the bearing. But why don't I put a drop on there? Doesn't need much. Actually, doesn't need any. But as long as I'm doing it, I'm just going to put a drop on one point. When it's put together, the shaft's going to be held, the 2 half shafts are going to be held together by these gears and by the bearings. They can't really separate. They can't really go anywhere. Like so. Alright, well then we'll take this piece, the gear side down. This should go down into the bearing. We're going to get that down in there all the way. Like that. There should be a shaft part sticking out. So now we got to build our mid shaft. The mid shaft prints flat again. You get these 2 shafts. They're not hollow. They're going to go together like that. And we're going to put the small gear on this outside part of it. And again, why don't I put a little drop on there just to make sure that small gear doesn't move. It was way more than I needed. I think I'll move some of that to the other side of it. And it just pushes all the way up to that flange part. And then there'll be another large gear. Again, just print it in whatever color you want. No one can see this stuff anyway. And it pushes on from the other side. So the 2 gears should be pushed close together, and your shaft assembly should look roughly like that. Now on this gear, we're going to be using smaller bearings, and these little guys have a outside diameter of 10 millimeter, and they're about 3 millimeter thick. Sorry, I can't keep it in camera because I can't look at what I'm doing and look at the camera's viewfinder at the same time. And I got a 6 millimeter inside hole. All these bearings are real common on eBay to find, so just go to eBay and put those dimensions in. You can either put it on the shaft or you can fit them down into the hole first. Might have been easier if I'd pre-fit them down in the hole, but we're doing it this way. So like that. So this time, why not? We'll just set that one on the end of the shaft. So now here's what we got is this. So now we're coming to the actual working part of this whole thing, the flywheel. The flywheel shaft are these two big pieces here. So again, they print flat. And we're just going to put them together like that. And they have a small gear that we're going to press on. I'm going to put a little dab of glue for it. The small gear prints flat. Didn't quite get the two halves exactly lined up. There we go. So now we have that. And now this large thick area we're going to stack on. Here in America, you buy a 1/2 inch washer. You can get a 1/2 inch hole by 2 inches on the outside. I'm sure you can probably find something similar in other parts of the world. So it's about 13.5 on the inside hole, and the outside isn't real critical because you got extra room, but 2 inches would be about 50 millimeters. In our case, they come different thicknesses, but the ones that I purchased, I was able to stack 10 of them together to occupy the space that's on here. This is our flywheel, our mass. I'd already pre-glued these together to make things go quicker during this build, but basically they're just gonna fit on there. And if you, in your country, if the washers are a little bit loose on that shaft, wrap a little tape around the plastic shaft first so that the washers will center up and stay there. Then on the very end there's a little cap that prints, and let's use some faster setting glue on the cap. So that we can keep building this thing. I'm going to put just a little bit of that around there. Take the cap and work it on there. Alright. And this whole menagerie is going to go with the long shaft side going down. And we need our little bearings, don't we? Let's get our little bearings. Same bearings that we used on the mid shaft. Not sure if I got it in there or not. Sounds like the bearing dropped off. Let's try that again. Might have been easier if I had put all the bearings just down into this frame before we even started. Yeah, I think that would make it easier. Give me that. There we go. Bearing on there. Bearing on there. So now we've got our box loaded. And now we kind of need to test things to make sure everything works right. And if it works right, we'll put a little bit of glue and glue this cover down. But let's make sure everything is spinning right here first. Got the cover on. It's pushed all the way in. So now if we grab this shaft. Yeah. So that's working good. See how it keeps running and running and running. And in fact, it takes quite a bit of work to stop it. So at this point, we can put the lid down. And again, it actually isn't important to even really glue the lid down, because once we put this robot together, the lid can't go anywhere. But why not be on the safe side? Put a little bit of that there. Am I doing this where I want it to be? A little bit here, and maybe a maybe a single dab down here. Then let's line everything up. Sorry if I'm off camera, but I have to be able to see what I'm doing here. Okay. So I've got glue on there, and I'm just gonna kind of pinch it here for a minute. Make sure it glues in the right place and that everything still is working right. Seems to be. Okay, so next let's move on to the legs. I've got one leg pre-built to save time and one that will assemble in real time. So this is what we're going to be building up next. It's a foot with ratchet wheels, and we got our linkage. So basically you can hear the ratchets. That locks it so the foot won't move backward, but the foot can roll forward. So we got this would be the robot's right leg. So we need to build the left leg. And we have to start with the foot to do that. Let's get the parts out here. And there we go. Now, when it came to making little metal rods and shafts for this project, I had a bunch of old welding rod out in the shop. So rather than making a trip to the hobby store or anything, I decided to use that. And it's just mild steel. Here in America it's called 1/8 inch. The rest of the world, I guess that measures about 3.13 millimeters, so probably a 3 millimeter shaft or something. But you could go to a hobby store, or you could probably even find a big nail or something. But we're going to cut down in each foot 6 pins like this. This is 1.25 inches long here in America. So for the rest of you, that'd be about 30 millimeters thereabouts. I'm going to make 6 of those and have those standing by and ready. Here's the main foot shell. There is a left and a right foot shell. This is the one that was going to be on the left leg, since we've already got the right leg built. It prints, as you see, sitting on the table. This is going to be a cap that's going to go onto the side of the foot. And again, it prints flat. Both parts print with no supports. And again, if you're using the Persia slicer, then just turn on the elephant's foot, set it around 0.14, and then you won't have to clean up any of the holes or any of the flashing or anything like that. But we're going to start by gluing this piece onto this piece. And I'm going to use some of my fast setting PLA glue here. Just going to put a little bit around the edges. I'm just putting little dots of it and along the bottom. You can see where there's places where it can glue. Like so. It's the number 16 weld on, in case you're wondering, but I've done videos talking about it. It's the best glue for PLA for the money. Huge tube like that costs with shipping like 15 bucks. The tube itself, the glue itself is like only 9, but by the time you throw shipping on. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to use all those 6 pins I told you about to hold the various parts into this. And let's start by putting in the ratchets. The square end is the back of the foot, and this ratchet, which prints flat on your bed like that, again no supports, and again if you use the elephant foots thing you won't have to clean it up. This square part here is going to be on the inside. I'm going to hold on the outside of the foot so you can see roughly where it's going to go. It's going to go into this hole here, and it's going to sit like that, except on the inside. So grab a a shaft, stick it in there. You can see how that can go in, and then feed this part in and just wiggle it around until you get it there. Oop, no, but don't let it. You know what? Let's go back one step. Let's keep the shafts from falling through. This is gonna make it easier. Let's just take one of the. Let's take this back side, this side of the foot, the large side. This is the cap we just glued on. Let's go with the solid side here. These are cosmetic cover plates. They print flat. Let's go ahead and glue one of those on the back side. That way when we put the metal shafts in, they can't fall all the way through because they will hit this and they'll be stopped. So let's put a little glue on there. I got a little bit more than what I wanted, but I think it'll be okay. I'm going to lay the foot flat to help center the thing up. And just apply a little bit of pressure. This stuff starts in real quick, so this won't take too long. So like I say, the cosmetic parts print flat, no support, like so. Okay, now let's go back to where we were. Let's get that rear ratchet back in there again and do what we just did, but now the pin won't be able to fall all the way through, so it'll be held just like that. Okay, so now you can see that little foot piece is trapped in there, and it looks like that from the inside, unless you let the pin fall out by tipping the thing over to show it in the camera. Okay, we're back together again, and let's put the front one in. The front one looks like just like a long bar, but the end of it actually has a taper to it, so we're going to want the taper facing down the bottom and this part facing in. This one would be a little bit more work to maybe put in. Let's see. Maybe it'd be easier from looking at it from the inside. Is that in the camera? Like I say, I'm staring at the part. I have no idea. I could use a camera person. So then here's this one, now flopping around, and that one flopping around. So now it's time for the wheels. The ratchet wheels themselves print flat vertically like this, no supports. You're going to need some O-rings. Again, I just have those cheap O-ring kits that you can buy that have all different sizes in them. I mean, the whole kit's less than $10, and you've got O-rings for every project you're ever going to want to do. So you just snap some O-rings on there. If you needed to look online for some, the inside where the O-ring is going to sit, sitting at about 12.8 millimeters, so you'd want it tight. So you'd want some O-ring that has a 12 millimeter or even smaller, 11, so that it would snap on tight. You don't want the O-ring to slip. The whole point of the O-ring is to make a traction tire. And you can put these in one of two ways, and if you put it in the wrong way, your ratchet's not going to work. This is the correct way that you're seeing in the camera, the way the little things are aimed. When you put them in, you'll know. We'll put the axle in, and if it doesn't rotate and lock, then you just pull the axle and flip the tire around. So if it's down like this, you want the foot to be able to move forward. Let's get it in camera. You want to hear that ratcheting sound, and then it should lock going the other way. Then you'll know you got the little ratchet wheel in the right way. And if you look at the one you did in the back, you're going to put the front one in exactly facing the same way. So once you figured one out, you can just look at the other to spot it. Then the front one should work the same way. So your whole foot should be able to roll forward but lock going back. So you know you got that done right. Okay, the next thing we're going to put in is going to be the leg. And again, there's a left and a right leg, but since we are building the left assembly, this is the left leg. And we're going to start by pinning in this into the back of the foot. So this part, just fish in like so, till you can hit the hole on it. And I missed the hole on it. Let's try it again. I think I hit it. No. I'm not hitting something. There we go. I think I'm in there. So there's the back part pinned in. And then you've got the support linkage. And you can notice how one sides have these divots that stick out. You're going to want those facing this flat pack side like that, not facing out like that, facing back along with that. But you're going to have to fish it down through there, and we're going to try to catch this hole here like so. There we go. So now to keep everything trapped in there, we glue this last cosmetic cover on, and that should keep all the pins contained, and that will be our leg assemblies. And apply a little bit of pressure. I'm just making the bottom of the cosmetic parts flat with the bottom of the feet. Make it real easy, so it's repeatable. And the next thing we're going to want to do is on our back on our gearbox, which should be dry by now because it's been sitting. We've got some cams that we need to put on there. And we've got some more metal parts. Okay, so where do we want to start? We want to start the side that we have the top glued on. We can take one of these cams, and you'll notice the output shaft has a flat, and these cams have flats on them. There's a round part here and then a bigger lip. See that? And then you grab one of your feet. Let's grab the left one that we just made. Again, we're working on the side where we put the cap in. Got these long axles. Got this part. Just start that going through there like that. Trying to stay in camera, but the parts are getting kind of long. Almost need to move the camera. Okay. So you can see how the foot is now tied into everything. And that round cam part, since it's offset, once it's pinned on there, that's going to move this back and forth. That gives the walking action. So take one of those cam pieces and work it onto that shaft and push it on all the way. And you got to make sure the leg is lined up like so. And there should be just a little bit of that axle left hanging out, and that's to help you line up this piece. Now this piece has to do with the crank that we're going to put in. You can see how it has a ridge. I want it so one way when you turn the crank, it's going to catch on that to spin it, but the other way, if you held the crank, this ramp would lift the crank up and allow everything to turn free. So let's glue this on, and try to do it without making a mess. Good luck with that, right? Put a little glue on there. Take this part, try to line it up with that little nubbin that's left of the shaft. That just helps you center everything. The only reason I left a little bit of nubbin of that. And actually, I feel like there should have been a little bit more sticking through, so I may not have everything in that gearbox pushed all the way together, but we'll find out. If things start binding up and not working, then it'll be kind of obvious. Okay. So I put that on with the lobe, the round part, aiming to the back. So that means on the opposite side of the gearbox we need to put this one on with the lobe aiming to the front, because we want them to be working opposite each other, like so. And out of that same metal that I made these axles, and I guess we didn't talk about the length of the axles, did we? Well, here in America, I used that 1/8 inch welding rod. The axle length is 4 inches. So in the rest of the world, that would be about 100 millimeters long for those 2 axles, which of course don't want to stay in place quite yet. All right. Well, what I was getting at is I took some of that same metal, and this is going to become the crank for the whole thing. And I just bent it in the vise. Didn't take any special tools. You could, if you had pliers, you could do it with pliers. But basically, the longest straight part of this crank, if this is staying in camera at all, is about no more than 3 1/4, probably no less than 3 1/8 on the long part for the bend. And then this part here isn't particularly critical. I went, it's about 7/8 of an inch. You can go an inch on this bend if you want. And this is the part that you're going to grab with your hand. I just left off a 3/4 inch piece to grab. For those of you in the land of metric, that'd mean make the straight part probably around 80 millimeters, and then make the middle bend somewhere around 20, and then leave yourself anywhere from 18 to 20 to grab as the handle. But this piece is going to slide right in here, and it should come all the way through. It shouldn't be binding. And we have this little cap piece, which we've printed flat on the bed again, and we should be able to wedge that on, and it should have fit a little snugger. But since it didn't, I'm going to put some glue on it. I don't want the glue to bind the shaft from moving. I just want it to hold the little cap on. And this is not fast setting glue, so this could be a problem depending on how quickly it does or doesn't set up. But where you want that secured at is you want to make sure that the crank can freely go past the highest part out here, so it can push in to grab. But if it continues around, see how it can climb and get out of the way? That way, if you're cranking it and you hold onto the crank, you're not going to jam everything up. Alright, so at this point, we can take... Oh boy, did I tell you guys everything wrong. You know, way back when I had us put this piece on, we should have had that leg on there first. Alright, no worries. I'm going to pull that off, pull this off, take the foot, put that on the axles, just like that. See, it's good that I make these mistakes on camera so you guys don't have to make the mistakes when you build. And that lobe is facing that way, so this lobe needs to be the opposite, so it should be like that. And maybe that maybe I'll even put a little bit of glue on that lobe. I just want to make sure it doesn't go moving. I don't think it needs much. Especially if I happen to glue it in the wrong position, I'm going to want to be able to move it. Okay. Now let's put this thing back on again. And let's re-glue it. Okay. So now with these axles and both feet on, let's move this thing back a little bit. Hang on. Okay. We are walking. We are working. Everything is good. So there's really not much left to do. I mean, you have a walking mechanism here, but you don't really have anything to hold these pins on. I mean, you could glue them, but I'm going to use a body shell to do that. In this case, there is a left and a right. I've already glued the arms on because I figured that's going to take a long time to set up, and they're simple to see. You can see the seam here. The arms print is two pieces, and the flat part sits flat on the bed that way, and that one flat on the bed that way. You just glue the two parts together. They print with no supports. Glued them on. There's a marking where they go there, and I just kind of line them up to a point down here. These little door parts, they're a separate piece in case you wanted to paint them or print them in a different color. I just glued them on there. The little eye is a separate piece so that I could paint it silver before I glued it in. I painted the background black just to save time. You can see how the leg axles are going to go into here and here. These large areas are points where you can put glue to hold the parts together. Exactly the same story on this side of the body. There's a left and a right arm. Glue them together, glue them on the body, glue the door on if you want it, glue the eye on if you want it. And this hole is to allow for that crank mechanism to poke out. So what we're talking about doing is taking this, lining up the axles, which is easier to do if you're looking at the bottom. So the camera really needs to be even further back. I haven't got much more room left in here to pull this camera back, I'm sorry. So you can see I've got that half is on. It looks like I could have had the axle just a little bit longer. This one is a little on the short side. So I don't think I'm actually going to glue this together. It just means that I cut one a little bit short. See, this one sticks out enough, but I want to be able to catch these main points here. Then I'm just going to put drops of glue on it. Just going to slide this whole thing together like that, and the thing would be done. But I think I'll just end the video here because I want to go cut a couple of shafts. They're just a little bit longer than that. I want to make sure they nest in there because that's the main thing that supports everything to the body. And this one's only sticking out maybe a 1/16 of an inch. I'd like to have it sticking out quite a bit more. I want to make sure that that there's enough room for the shaft to get nested into here and here, so it's really supported by the body and the legs and everything all become one when it gets glued together. So there's your build. Learn from my mistakes on the build video, the correct way to do it to save yourself some time. But you can see it's not a hard build. Not if you do it right. And you've already seen the run build, so you already know how it works when it's done.